선생님 지금 확실하게 리코딩 된다. 다시. I just to let you know that you guys are being recorded. So let me see.
Oh, thank you. Which page?
이건 선생님 그냥 아니고 이거는 CPT에 나오는 거 내용 중에 사실 되게 사람들 overall things that might be really helpful for students to actually have it in mind. Those areas that typically disruptive as a result of having gone through traumatic experiences more like repeatedly. So that 4 of us today?
I don't know. Maybe they're on their own.
In case they hope that they can see.
I will turn off the lights.
안 보인다. 아니면 스크린샷해서 나중에 선생님 I can actually capture the screenshot and post it on it.
Okay.
That's it. So if you actually did you have a chance to read a case example? They a couple 2-page long in a handout that I gave you. This is like a page for you. I can let me pinpoint because today I hope that we can talk about one patient, page 21 to 22, so that we can apply this patient's experience to these experiences to these issues, and we can actually think about it. Now add we can add a triggers. So also kind of a grounding and coping when she feels highly triggered. So they kind of really aligns with the case areas that it's impacted by those those traumatic experiences. What are some of the triggers for those clients who's gone through these kind of traumatic experiences in their life, and what we can teach them to actually help them to cope with those triggers, basically. Okay. So for you,
This case is horrible.
I know. So that's very intense case.
This is a horrible case.
So page 21 to 22. So that this can be really very practical application. I can ask.
The students cannot read. You already sent out.
Yes, I gave it up a copy. Please. Read through. I can capture one more time for this. Come on in.
Hi,
Hi,
Emma.
Emma.
Read your book. It's so thick. Oh, yes.
This really has everything.
One after another. This
Okay.
is a typical multiple.
It's incest.
Yeah, start from incest.
Starting from incest.
What a story.
So many things. It's quite like a very shocking story. But at the same time, it's typical. Not typical. I can say typical, but not
Rare.
rare, right?
Yeah. When someone else other people.
Camera. Does it really show? So after you read, read through the case, why don't you just fill out those, blank, way, in your own way, what kind of this is more likely what kind of a belief she might have developed about her own sense of safety. Safety, okay, let me put it this way. So, there are 5 areas. The safety, trust, empower, and control, esteem, and intimacy. These are very common, typical areas that gets really disrupted by traumatizing experiences, particularly developmental, and prolonged, and also repetitive trauma in general. And when people actually is going through trauma, and there are more specific belief tied to about what kind of things they see about their own sense of safety. For example, like about self, about safety. I mean, I'm not safe. I'm not safe, or the world is not a safe place for me, kind of a thing, right? So that there are, and also as a result of their life experiences, there are typical we call it a self view or world view is developed, which actually is one of the things that maintains their avoidance or maintains their the set of symptoms in a way. So I guess this is the reason, I mean, the case can be really helpful because it's one of those very intense, very kind of a terrifying case that could really disrupt a person's their own identity and how they view themselves and how they view others, especially people, and how they view their world in general. So I guess it's really good, kind of a really good exercise for you to apply. When you actually read these kind of passages, if you put yourself in this person, then what kind of belief I actually would have end up having about safety, about your trust. The trust meaning that trust to yourself, being able to trust your own judgment and feelings, or being able to trust others. Okay, for example, if somebody is really good to me, then they care about me, or there is something good in for them. Or if I actually let other people in, then they're gonna walk away with me. They're gonna take advantage of me and ended up actually walking away on me, kind of a thing. Does this make sense? Yeah. And about the power and control, meaning, especially with the kids who are actually going through a lot of developmental trauma, if they is going through a lot of those invalidating experiences or punishment or put down or rejections, where they don't know what to do about it, then really they feel kind of really powerless or helpless about the situation in general. That makes them feel like there's nothing I can do about it. Or no matter how hard I try, it's not gonna change. So that they don't actually have a lot of really doesn't actually be able to see themselves as a powerful person, but being capable of exerting any kind of power, even though they actually later down the road, they are in a powerful position. And also they tend to see other people has too much power over them, so that they don't know how to actually stand up for themselves and have a voice or assert their needs and boundaries. And esteem is how to view yourself in a way. So people who has gone through a lot of trauma, it's very typical for them to see themselves as someone, I'm damaged. I'm bad, I'm damaged, I'm not lovable, I'm incapable, I'm not worthwhile. Nobody, also about others, especially with a relational trauma, others are evil, humankinds are evil. And especially with the female who has gone through a lot of sexual trauma, men are asshole. And they are evil. And if they are nice to me, and all they care about actually having sex with me, kind of thing. And the last one, the intimacy. You know, if you cannot trust your feelings and your judgment, if you cannot trust the other, right? Then you don't want to let your control go. You don't want to let other people in your life, because like you do actually has gone really hurt. You've been hurt very badly, repeatedly by people, so that letting people in your life has not been safe for you, right? So that if you doesn't feel like comfortable or like a safe letting other people in your life, and it does not want to willing to share, because as much as you let other people in means that you are letting other people actually have the power over those and share the area with other people. But if you don't feel safe, and maybe like make you feel really anxious, then like having a relationship with other people is very challenging, especially intimate relationship. So intimate relationship meaning that you stay vulnerable, basically. You're willing to take a risk of being hurt for some of like a greater connection, greater and meaningful connection. In order for you to do that, you need to go through, show yourself in, right? Put yourself out there and show yourself in, sharing your story and sharing some of the areas in your life, being able to rely on other people. So the intimacy is something that is really out the window. And all these 5 area, she's struggling here. This is an example that she's really struggling. So that it's a 21 to 22 page. 21 to 22. Do you remember the handout that I did? Pass around. Yeah, it's the same thing. So that now, because we haven't had time to actually doing something practical like this, I think it can be really helpful. So we can fill out the blanket together.
So how many sessions usually this?
It's all told is 25 topics, but I don't think not anybody really going through the whole 25.
But this is a short term model. But the module is a 25 sessions designed by them.
And some of them are really overlapping. For example, linking those like PTSD and substance abuse, there's a lot of compassion actually being talked about in the textbook, where there's a separate topic, separate chapter, just like a devoting on like compassion too. So I guess this one is pretty kind of handy when it comes to actually having like something that is concrete, like a DBT book where there's a lot, but
Usually
nobody.
How many people can dedicate that many hours?
Yeah, because the DBT actually runs almost like 2 years in general.
And you have to have money.
Money, and also like typically, even though when we do like a DBT, there's individual session.
Right.
Yeah, because DBT as a group session as well as skill building, because that's what DBT actually hypothesized. People who didn't actually grow up with like a really facilitating environment, the lack of skills, cognitive, like emotional, relational skills is what actually perpetuate their problems. So that's where skill building is coming to play. And also individual session, they do like more more memory, like more their own personal past traumatizing, processing those past traumatizing materials. So they go hand in hand. The whole module is about 2 years.
Right? Minimum 2 years, maximum 3 years. So this was more practical actually than DBT.
This one is again more flexible because it says like if you have only one session,
Right.
you still just pick. Okay. Let me know if you're done so that we can actually do a group practice together.
Only says here, yeah, it's done.
So that you can actually just write down the parts she talks about those area. For example, like Fit 22, I felt that I was such a bad person. Everything was my fault. That's our belief in a way, right? About this thing. I'm a bad person and everything is my fault. She's really actually doing a lot of self-blame, right? How many more minutes do you guys need?
Only intimacy.
Okay. But these are not all exclusive to each other. Get some water then.
제가 오늘 다른 회사
아, 그래요? 여기 아니요. 저희가 오늘 지금 구글로 수업하는 중. Again, what a story, right?
I need to explain.
Yeah, why don't you just we can actually, yeah. So what are some of the things that it is stated, more likely stated here?
For myself,
Mm-hmm.
safety, I wrote it, the world is not safe for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
Here.
I need to
Yeah. And if again, you keep just, why don't you notice what are some of the things that you wrote down? You there are something that is not something that you're noticing more, but then what she is writing down, you feel free to fill it in, and we will process together. This is how experientially, how it will be more sticking on your mind more. Do it this way rather than me just saying everything. Oh, you are actually doing everything.
yeah.
Embarrassed.
Persistent.
I am
Persistent to do.
persistent to do. Do what?
When the others are going, according to the book, if the boyfriends are going to have some drugs or rap, or she cannot deny it. So for her, it should be action, whatever the boyfriends did. Otherwise, she wants to please them. That's why I'm persistent to do, forced to do.
Okay, then I'm forced to do. I am forced to do. I'm forced to do. Right. Nothing was.
I write inside, it's my fault. Everything is my fault. It's my fault. People push any every then not sociable. Vulnerable. Okay.
Intimacy.
I just wrote in this.
Abusive.
Relationship. Healthy. By others. I don't like it.
Okay, yeah, you don't have to. The coping and grounding is something we can actually touch on, the second part. So, okay, do you read what is written on the board? Can you read it?
Yes.
Oh. You cannot see? Okay. Do you want to sit a little bit closer? Come on. Yeah. So that what do you want to add?
I'm still reading.
I'm reading? Okay.
Yeah.
So number one, this is very incredibly heartbreaking story, right? It's incest, right? Beginning from incest by brother, by his father, right? And another boyfriend, and also like an abusive relationship as an adult, right?
So I have one question in my mind. Since I read this report on the first session, I was really confused. Like, is it possible for someone to remember what happened when he or she was 3.5 years old?
Honestly, really treating, it sounds like a too big of aim in a way. Like a keeping her from like wanting to kill herself. Really, that can be a huge goal because like to her she says like she keeps saying that she feels she lives in fear constantly, right? The world seems to be really unsafe place for me. She feels like she cannot really live her life without actually have a lot of fear, ongoing fear. But that to her, just dying feels like such a relief. If I die, then I don't have to deal with a lot of intense anxiety like this. So that actually I've worked with this type of clients too, just really going through a lot of those incredible. This is what I mean by developmental trauma, right? Because to her, those people, especially the family members, father was abusive, brother was abusive, mom was neglectful, right? The mom didn't do anything about what has been happening.
The first incident she remembered was when she was 3.5 years old. So as for me, I cannot remember
nothing really. Yeah, and also in a way it means that there's no any sort of a very emotionally shocking events that actually didn't happen in that time either. There are some people.
Smooth, that's why.
Me neither. I don't remember. I don't remember anything really earlier life like this either. But to them it's real likely there are not everybody actually remembers even with the incest either. I guess there's some individual differences. But typically people with a live heightened anxiety, we call it neurotic people. There are some people attachment terms like a more difficult attachment, right? Then they tend to actually register their own negative experiences almost like a picture in their brain. But I mean, personally, I don't, and not everybody actually has this really clear recollection about what happened. But there are some people who, even though it can be sometimes like comes back as like a nightmare, then that can be one of the reasons why they can remember flashes, like not whole, but bits and pieces of flashes. Because to her, if had it been kind of abused sexually at 3 and sort of nothing happened after that, then she could have actually buried. It could have been really buried, like a in her brain, not really being on the surface again. But to her, it kind of came back and came back and came back. So that it kind of registered because like it's like trigger after trigger and after trigger, so that she can really pick up those triggers very easily. Does this make sense? So then now she says like at a certain time when she was like more like an adult, then she blanked out, meaning that she doesn't want to because it's too much for her to remember and feel, that she just want to dissociate. We call it blanking. Well, like sometimes the memory loss is very common, especially for the child trauma. Unless there are specific trigger actually really like shaking their like a system. But when it kind of resurfaces, and that's one of the reasons why people do not want to do any kind of like trauma related work, because they don't know what is out there, like what has been buried for so long for them, that what kind of, we call it opening a can of worms. We call it opening a can of worms, where they don't know what kind of worms are sitting beneath their like their like a memory level. But this case is really, I mean, this is a real case. I don't think probably the author is based on probably one of those like a participant of the research when she was doing, or like how effective this like seeking safety could be for this person now. And the reason why the author is like illustrating is like how like trauma actually leads into like multiple substances, right? Because like it's a way of them coping with a lot of emotional and physical pain. Emotional, physical pain, living in fear, powerlessness, feeling trapped, feeling hopeless, because like when you see yourself as someone who's everything is my fault and I'm the bad person, I cannot rely on anybody out there, but every day my life is like a hell. I feel your life, like feel like you're living a life hell, then wouldn't you want to check yourself out? So then they really feel like killing themselves is the only way to end this like a seemingly bottomless pain kind of a thing. Yeah. So and the reason why so this is very to her, we are working on like how, if a person has gone through this kind of like life experiences, about the safety one she wrote, right? She was like physically hurting, so that she actually has like she cannot protect herself, right? So that I cannot protect herself. Basically, she was young to protect herself as a child, right? And all the perpetrator as somebody who's like and has more power over her, and whoever has really have more power over her didn't protect her, right? So that I can protect myself. In dangerous situation. And also this one actually goes with like power and control too. Because I cannot protect myself, I'm forced to do the drug. I'm forced to do having sex with somebody whenever, even if I don't want to, right? So something I don't want, then I don't want to. And also, I am helpless. This is more likely goes to like esteem kind of a thing. I see myself as I'm a bad person. Everything is my fault. I'm helpless. More likely, I'm damaged. I'm damaged. And also with the sexual trauma, I'm dirty too. I must have done something wrong. Or like something about me, just asking for kind of in a sexual intercourse. Because it happened many times, especially with a lot of multiple rapes. It's something that they are struggling with. I must have done something wrong because like I was like sexually assaulted or raped multiple times, not just once. About trust one, this is what really about now. She's like she as a child, right? As a child, she doesn't really experience what healthy, normal relationship is like, right? That she didn't, to her, really like unbalanced, like abusive relationship is more normal, right? So when actually she has some kind of feeling, when she actually feels something just for somebody, she actually has a very difficult time trusting her own feelings and judgment. So that people who with a lot of their trauma, like I thought I was able to trust this person. Because like when she actually into like relationship, at least she believes and she was hopeful that this person is oh, my boyfriend cares about me, my boyfriend loves me, or like this person is gonna be there for me, protecting me, whatever those like kind of hopes, right? So that she she enters into relationship, but her judgment didn't prove to be accurate, right? So that with those like a repeated like abusive relationship that she got herself into that ended up badly hurting her, then she developed like, I cannot trust my feelings. I cannot trust my judgment about when it comes to romantic relationship. So that trust, self-trust, we call it self-trust, particularly be able to trust. Can I move? I can help you so I can move. Be able to trust. Being able to trust own feelings or more like a judgment. So that if you think about like not being able to trust your judgment, then you really always second guessing. Am I making a mistake? What if I make a mistake? Is it okay? Is it safe? Am I doing okay? Am I not? So there's a lot of like a second guessing that is very consuming. That's one thing that is really common. Self-trust is really out the window, particularly a person ended up actually going through a lot of multiple traumatizing experiences. Then not being able to trust their own feelings and judgment is real, psychologically very taxing.
In the other way about mistrust, if we are not self-aware of ourselves, we cannot trust our own feelings too.
And also, to her, her salient feeling is almost like an anxiety, fear. She wasn't given to develop her experience or a lot of other different kinds of emotional palette at a varying degree. So that her experience with like a feeling is very limited. So that she like when you feel okay and happy and comfortable, it means that it's okay to do more, right? If you are anxious, then something is scary, but to her everything feels very scary, right? So that not being able to using a feeling as a way to guide our actions, that's one of the areas that's very challenging, because if you cannot trust your feelings, then you need at least somebody then you can trust, right, for you to be able to kind of check out, balance it out. But if you nobody, then going through all that, basically like remember going through like this, like a lot like this, but not being able to regulate your own feelings at the same time, not actually having anybody you can rely on to really soothing, regulating, and managing your intense overwhelming sense for your bodily senses and your emotions. And if it is too much, and that's where people start doing something that is, like a self-injurious behaviors, like a cutting, smashing, drug, like using drugs, or like, suicidal, because it's too much for them to really bear. And about trust, again, do you see, like, about the trust one? People cannot be trusted, right? If you let people in, people cannot be trusted when it comes to protect me, when it comes to, like, take care of my needs, make me feel good about myself. No, people cannot be trusted, right? So that unable to trust others. And about the power and control, right? She was forced to do a lot of things that she didn't want to do, beginning from those, like, early sexual encounter, right? And even, like, incest by her brother and father itself was incredibly traumatizing. But, the very first, like, intercourse with a boyfriend was a rape, right?
Oral sex also CB.
Excuse me?
Oral sex also CB. Her boyfriend.
So that, the first time I experienced intercourse was right after I turned 13 years old, and my boyfriend raped me. So that the very first like a sexual encounter, again, was something that is, like, forced upon her, right? And here now, later on, about others, other people are too powerful. Even though they're right, even though I don't want to do, the people around me are more powerful than I am. So that when I'm with other people, that actually I ended up doing something that I don't want to do, and that's one of the things that makes you feel her unsafe too, right? Because, like, even though there's something, when I'm with the people, right, I cannot protect myself in a situation when I don't want to do. And also now, in esteem, there's a lot of esteem. I'm a bad person. Everything is my fault. And also here, I was evil, even, right? I was told that I was evil. And also, about esteem, I was evil. And here, I remember growing up always feeling people hated me and wanted to hurt me. So the people hated me and hurt me, wants to hurt me. Right? So that to her, people, really, right? It's not like, they're her caregiver. So that to her mind, people is a trigger. People, relationship, people is a trigger. Because, like, to her, she has actually very, very limited experiences. Being safe, being supported, being validated, being heard, right? So that with a lot of relationship, and relational trauma particularly, people are danger to her. It's like a threat or danger too. Then their body just automatically acting, when they are with the people, then they go like this. Their body, part of their body is really hyper-tuned, tuning others to, a way to protect themselves. Putting the radar on, gather whatever those informations out there, so that I can just react very fast. So that when they are with the people, they end up spending a lot of energy because their radar is wheezing like crazy. So that's one of the things, that being around with people is too tiring, so that they start isolating themselves because it's taking too much out of them, rather than gaining something really small, but taking too much out of them. So that's really like withdrawing from people, not socializing.
Then mostly all the PPS peoples will be introvert.
I cannot say more introvert. It's more likely, in a way, when you say introvert, it's more likely they are born with a tendency that they want to have those time and space to themselves so that they can recuperate. With the PTSD, it's more like stress reactions. It's more like a learned behavior in a way that being with the people takes a lot out of me. So that or like that I end up feeling really hurt and bad, and like again ridiculed, embarrassed, shamed, or like incompetent, or like not loved. So that it's better for me to feel safe. I don't want to. My life is already is shitty. I don't want to feel more shittier than already I'm feeling. So that it's better. So there's an energy component to it. At the same, there's a feeling component to it too.
Moreover, behaviors.
Behaviors like staying away from people, because there are some people who still actually have a strong desire to still I want to actually have a relationship. So that with these people, there are some people still like being left alone is a evidence that I am doomed in a way. I'm not lovable, so I need to be in a relationship as a way that I am worthy. There are some people, better relationship is better than no relationship, so that they still stay in like a really abusive relationship. There are some people like I don't want to do anything to do with like people. They choose voluntarily staying really like a cocooning themselves, so that I cannot say only one thing, but typically either keep pushing too much. Sometimes like even though it's healthier for them to stay away from this abusive relationship, but they don't want to because like again. No relationship meaning that I'm not lovable. So that being abused is better than having no connection. Another one again is like, no, I'm done. Basically, I'm done. So the people who have said I'm done, then they don't actually have any intimacy, right? Intimacy issue meaning that they are not letting people in. So that now here, like I'm better off when I'm alone. But at the same time, again, being alone is better than being in a negative relationship. But being in a healthy and supportive relationship is better than being alone, right? So that even though sometimes intimacy, it can be an issue, it can be not be an issue, depending on how you see it. If you actually in a really abusive relationship, probably ending a relationship is better as a goal. But remember we talked about like a trauma. Our goal is not just surviving, it's more like a thriving, right? So that if you're staying alone all the time, then you are limiting your life in a way that like actually could offer more, right? So that but if you just like staying away and aloof from relationship, even though these opportunities are there, right? Then, yeah, it's more likely you are not you're giving yourself a chance to living your life to the fullest, kind of a thing. So that if your environment is still very abusive and exploitative, then probably not actually pursuing any relationship. It probably is more adaptive. If you are really surrounded by some people who actually seem to be like in a good candidate, but you are not actually giving a chance, then you are actually like depriving yourself of an opportunity, right? So it really depends on. And also like intimacy with others is like again connection. I'm done with the connection basically. People are not worthy. Does this make sense? So no matter what trauma, any types of a trauma you are actually dealing with, particularly with the shock trauma, safety is the one. Because remember the anxiety is through the lens of like danger. Remember, everything looks very like a reddish danger, threat, right? So that shock trauma, number one thing is about like safety. So that no matter what the trauma, the very basic one that actually touches on every traumatizing experiences is the safety. Because like by definition, traumatizing experiences like in your life, right? Your life was threatened. You either witness or experiences like a life-threatening situation. So that where you didn't feel safe physically. And with the developmental trauma, more likely these are three things. It really twine a lot, because like with the safety, with the esteem one, particularly the esteem one, so that when we talk about like a low self-esteem, right? It's normal for this person to actually have a very low self-esteem, given what she has been experiencing, right? If you constantly put down, your boundaries not expected, you're ridiculed, you're punished, you're embarrassed, shamed, hurt, but you cannot help but feeling that you're a bad person, that there must be something wrong with me. Nobody loves me, nobody cared about me. Nobody's out there who will stand up for me, kind of a thing, right? Or I don't deserve, and about the intimacy one, if anybody actually is good for you, if a person is really used to having like abusive relationship, if anybody is good to you, you feel like very agitated because you don't feel used to it. So that sometimes people who actually only knows like abusive relationship, they somehow actually manage to find themselves like a good relationship. They do actually have a lot of anxiety about actually having a good relationship because they feel like I don't deserve this. So about the esteem one, I don't deserve I don't deserve happiness. I don't deserve any good partner. So that when they actually have a good life experiences, they're afraid of when the shoe is gonna drop. Does this make sense? Because they are so used to feeling like very hurt and miserable and anxious. If something that really feels nice, then they feel like anxious about feeling nice about it. And that's one of the reasons they kind of repeat the abusive relationship. Although it's not healthy to them, it's something that they are used to. And so that although it's not healthy, they feel more comfortable staying in those like their known area. Something is known to them rather than something is unknown to them. So that these 5 areas is really powerful, very helpful and very practically very powerful lens for a lot of any kind of anxiety problem. People with a lot of anxiety problem is these are 2, safety and power. Number 1, thinking of the worst possible scenario. Number 2, I cannot cope with. So that they're underestimating their power to handle whatever those if they fear the situation. That's where people, the anxiety is going out of control. Number one again, thinking of the worst possible scenario, right? Number 2, underestimating their power, their power, their capacity to handle or cope with their feared situations. That's what really maintaining those anxiety. And with the depression, esteem and self-trust, particularly with depression, with it has a lot to do with it's the low esteem and also intimacy. When they don't actually have a supportive relationship is one thing that is powerful, like a protective factor, right, for depression. But if you feel like there's no one you can turn to, no meaningful connection that keeps you feel keeps you alive, that depression, with the PTSD, anxiety, depression,
Panic attack.
Hmm?
What about panic attack?
Panic attack is anxiety, one of the anxiety. Yeah. Panic attack is where your body is acting as if you're under life-threatening situation, although you are in a safe situation.
It also characterized by the depression too.
If people go through a lot of those panicky sensations, so that if there's unsafe situation is perpetuated for a long time to the point that they feel like it's too exhausting, because having too much energy, living their life in fear, just really taking a lot out of you, so that even if there's something you want to do, you just possibly cannot do it. Now, at some point, here, There are something on the other, some more like there are something some of the sentence that she said that she didn't leave the house. Hold on.
Third paragraph.
Excuse me.
Third paragraph.
So the paragraph 1, 2. Growing up, always feeling people hated me and nervous.
My anxiety was so bad. Page 22, third paragraph.
23rd.
At 17, my anxiety was so bad. I couldn't leave the house.
Yeah, so anxiety too so bad I couldn't leave the house. Then we call it like an agoraphobia. Because I mean, to her, her house is the only place that she can feel safe. Out in the world out there doesn't feel safe. Even if the agoraphobia is really becomes really worse, then they only stay in their own room. Especially when they live with other family members, they cause a lot of the pain. Then even with the again, that's what initially something specific happened to them, then they feel unsafe. Then those fear becomes more generalized, so that even the thought of you stepping out of your own house feels like you're having a panic attack. The people actually, so that's where their life becomes more like a limited, because they cannot possibly leave the house. So the clients that I used to work with, she was actually having, again, very similar background like this. And even the thought of like taking out her trash, she wasn't able to. And also like even going to like in a school for conference with her son, for her first son, she wasn't able to. Like, so that when there's like a doctor's appointment, she actually has to work on soothing her anxiety for her to be able to leave the house. So it's common, really. In a way, their life becomes like more limited and limited and limited. So that the only place they feel safe is like very really like very selective areas. So that anxiety is like, we call it, anxiety is more like a whack-a-mole. It's just not stuck with something. It just she has a lot of social anxiety too, because to her people again has been like a threat. So the being seen by other people, she feels she feels unsafe. And if she she already feels bad, she really feels really very bad about herself. So that if other people criticize, she actually has a look. Other people sort of like criticizing, disapproving, ridicule, like sort of like a disapproving look. She easily feels very shamed. So that even though people do not say something specific, that's how she feels really, often. So that again, it's better staying away from people. Okay. Yeah. So why don't we take 10-minute break? When we come back, now we'll be working on the triggers and coping. The grounding thing. Can I erase it? So I mean, yeah. This part, so we can feel this part in the second half of our session today. Ooh. Mosquito.
Yeah, one mosquito. Professor, last time you give us homework, right?
I gave you homework, yes. Do you remember?
Like,
Oh, like, there was a set of like, in a list of those, like, handout. Do you see that? Like, safe coping skills, remember? And the homework was like reading through the list of, reading through the handout and pick a couple of activities, things that, you used to do, but you stopped doing it, or like sounded appealing, so give it a try.
I wrote it too
Uh-huh.
for stop doing.
Uh-huh.
Defeats from emotional pain. And number 3, action first and feelings will follow.
What page?
Oh, I don't know. Usually from the phone, I just say.
Yeah.
Oh, action first is page.
Yeah, 107 page, 107 actions first, and feeling will follow. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do when I feel like it, versus like, just do it and see if your feeling follows.
In my opinion, instead of doing just action, firstly let me think. After that, if it is alright, let me follow to action. So without any first thought, just doing action I don't want to do, so I want to stop doing that. Firstly thinking, after that action will follow. And it is from emotional pain. So really emotional is, for me, it's very hard to understand because since from my childhood we are not learning about the emotional. So though I learn it, it's very hard to make me understand and to make me know, to make me apply how to implement. It's very difficult for me. So I want to.
When you say emotional pain, feeling like you're a bad person all the time. Feel like you have those heightened anxiety all the time. You feel a lot of fear, but you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. So that going through a lot, feel like you're feeling helpless about whatever you are going through. That's emotional pain.
And I want to do and helpful for me. I wrote it too. One is pace yourself. If overwhelmed, go slower. If stagnant, go faster. Number 2 is create a new story. You are the author of your life. Be the hero who overcomes adversity.
Hi, Mark. Welcome back.
Thank you, Professor.
You're free. You are very welcome to have a. Excuse me?
Yeah, I was listening. Today has been a hectic day, so when I came home, I was doing one or two things, but I was listening to everything. Only that I was not on video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me know if you have any questions or something that doesn't really, make sense to you.
Yes, Professor. Yes, Professor. Thank you.
So how did it go? Have you actually started trying a couple of things, right?
Yeah.
To teach it from your pain or like in actions first, and then the feelings will follow.
Yeah, without when we get angry, when I get angry, without thinking first, I used to just express out my anger towards others. So that is not good. Let the feelings walk first. After that, the action comes. Then it's good. Without any feelings, just expressing out all the angers that I can hurt the others as well too.
Hey, Professor. Yeah, thank you so much for the class thus far. The client that we are talking about, just have a small question about that. Is like the family mentioned here in the case. Are they like a stepmom or stepfather or stepbrother, stepsister, or a real family that we are talking about?
If it is like a step family, then they probably mentioned it a step. So that the
Okay.
thing that they is not mentioned, meaning we can probably safer to assume that it's a biological mother and father and brother.
Okay, and one more thing, Professor, like it was mentioned that mother was not emotionally attached to her. But later on, we don't hear or we don't see any involvement or any mention about mother.
I know.
So I'm just curious about what might be the reason because so many things happening her in her life through her brother, through her boyfriends, and through her father even. So, but only once there is a mention about her mother, and that is about emotionally detachment or something like that. So, just curious about what might be the reason, though it is not stated over there.
Mm-hmm.
But what is your view on that? I just wanted to know.
Yeah, I mean, it might have a lot of different kind of scenarios. The possible scenario is that the mother is going through a lot of her own issues. She might be her own like a depression or trauma or stress or trauma related to mental health issues. Or physically, she can be not functioning merely, or what else? So can you imagine? You can think of like this person, then the client that was illustrated in this case example. Had she gotten married with abusive partner, will she be able to function? Do you think will she be able to function as a good, protective, and caring, or like a stable mother?
Yeah, that is also true.
So that you can think of that the mother probably went through a lot of her own issues that really limiting her to be able to function as a mother, because she cannot function as an individual. And
Thank
which
you,
is
Professor. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you. Yeah.
and that's one of the things about trauma things, because it's really intergenerational. So that uh kids growing up, alcoholic father or like an abusive father, they turn out to be more likely, because of the some part of it, their gene, but at the same time, a lot of unhealthy familiar environment that really makes them easily for them to be able to resort to those unhealthy coping skills. At the same time, not being able to see those like a good parenting model or like a role model in when it comes managing their own challenging emotions. So it's easier for them to actually pick up booze or drugs or acting out, or
So the mother is not playing her role in her family.
so that the mother I'm pretty is pretty, although it's not stated, it, she must have gone through a lot, so that she's is not really capable of functioning as more like more like an adult, protective adult. Because I mean, currently, I am working with a client whose mother has been has been really using different kinds of drugs, so that she was in and out of jail while she was growing up, where she doesn't actually have any sort of in a good relation attached an attached relationship with the mother either. I mean, Ralph, does this answer your question? Hello.
Yeah, Professor. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
can you think of any other in a possible scenario about those the mother's absence in her life?
No, it makes sense because there is no other thing mentioned about her death, as she mentioned about her father's death as well as her brother's death.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no such thing mentioned about her mother. So the possibility that you have mentioned, I think, yeah, we can consider that one.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
but sadly, again, she's likely this client had she actually have her own baby, her own child, her child is more likely to is going through a lot of anxiety, because her life, the child's life has not been really stable and predictable and reliable, and anxiety is about going through a lot, really unstable and unpredictable way, so that you don't know what to expect, while as a child you don't actually have any control over about your environment. Okay, so can we just quickly now, moving on to um, these triggers and coping and grounding thing. So now, given you know given okay, let's do this exercise first, like page 312. There's like in a typical like in a triggers for substance use in PTSD, where some of them is like apply here. I can actually
312.
312, page 312. There's like a table about typical triggers in both conditions. Hold on. So now think about those triggers you can write down, especially applying to this her, right? More likely what you read on the case, or like what you think she might actually feel really triggered about her past trauma, right? Or like what you can identify that is actually displayed on this table. Yeah, I just like took a photo of those the table on page 312.
Only triggers left, Professor.
Yeah, for triggers, and we'll actually touch on like a grounding.
Triggers in use.
Yeah, because the grounding is when mostly needed when people are feeling triggered very heavily. Remember, like grounding is more likely somehow people PTSD seems to deflect that we're experiencing right? Re-experiencing it happens when people feel triggered, reminded of those like past experiences. Then that's where they need to using their like grounding as a way to stay present in the moment, right? Take them back to the past. Okay, so Emma, do you want to give it a try? Can you write down the triggers?
Just very simple. I think that other people are triggered.
Trigger, yes. Particularly like people who seems to be forceful, right?
Yeah.
Forceful, criticizing or ridiculing, right? Ridiculing or or shaming her, right? So that to her, people, right? Again, what can I say? Hurtful people, basically. So to her, there might be, it does not stay specified, but there are certain words, right? Certain words like, she might have been told, and she was told like she was an evil, right? Or like, anything that, something that she probably repeatedly heard from her mother or like a father. You are nothing, you stupid, you bitch, what some of the things are really negative, swearing, America swearing, right? Those things can be certain words, right? And now here she actually has someone who resembles her brother, her abuser, right? So that it can be a look, even it can be a look, facial expression, beard, hairstyle, smell, body, like if they were very like a certain like a body type, they can be all triggered because their body stores. So like it can be a look, smell, body type, how tall, short, stocky, lanky, and sometimes like a beard or mustache.
Resemblance.
What is this? Anything that is like more likely somebody that she was hurt the most, basically. So resemble those abuser, and also remember a thought that she was such as I am bad. Remember, there's like a trigger. I'm a bad person. So remember, we talked about like a trigger. It's just not just external things, internal thing. So certain thoughts, memories, images, even thoughts and the feelings. So that when she feels hopeless or when she feels powerless, it can be a triggering feeling too. So that I'm a bad person, feeling that I am bad, or like I am filthy or dirty.
Professor, in power and control, I wrote it being criticized or yelled at is right or wrong.
Excuse me, what?
For the power and control, the triggers will be being criticized or yelled at, which is written on the typical triggers tables.
So that being better, I am powerless. Powerless is a trigger. Feeling powerless. Feeling powerless. Feeling powerless is a trigger because when she was powerless, a lot of bad thing has happened to her. right? And feeling hopeless. Right. And also so she was actually she was addicted to that. She tried initially, remember, she was actually trying out a lot of different kinds of like drugs, right? It was more likely initially began more likely like experimental. Then she got hooked to heroin, like a more hardcore drugs by her boyfriend. So that if she actually the drugs, right, different kinds of drugs, then if she see the ads, advertisement, or like and watching any kind of documentary about certain types of a drug, or people with people who actually like struggling with the like drug addiction kind of a thing, they can be a trigger because it reminds of her past too. Does this make sense? So here, when you see like a substance use, you can see ads for alcohol, ads for drug. So drug, paraphernalia. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but it's more likely any kind of like a drug-related equipment or tools that produce like a contain, so that you saw those like in films, like people were making kind of like a drugs. Have you seen that? Have you seen like Breaking Bad? No. The like chemistry teacher like cooking cocaine. No. Yeah. So that if these people watch it, also kind of like any sort of drama, dramatized footage was seen, or news stories about like a drug cartel, and like films, movies, like shows that actually lost showing those like a drug related thing, there is a trigger. And also here like a celebration. Celebration is a trigger because like people often alcohol can be associated with celebration, sadness, loneliness, boredom, right? So depending on what they use, so they boredom, feeling bored is a huge trigger for a lot of people. So that when it's the same with the diet too. When people do diet, it's not just about you just like eating food, right? It changes what you eat, how you eat, and who you eat with, right? And about the lifestyle change, you need to basically you eat less, eat healthy, eat less, eat healthy, and also while you move around more, and staying away from drinking. Staying away from drinking meaning they probably socializing less. And when you actually eat less and want to control more over what you want to eat, what you need to eat, then you stay away from people, or you pack your own meal because you cannot control over when you eat with other people, right? The same thing with the drinking. Drinking actually has a really associated lifestyle too. You have a drinking buddy. When you feel happy, you drink. When you feel sad, you drink. When you feel lonely, you drink. When you feel tired, when you drink, you drink. When you cannot sleep, you drink.
When you feel happy, you drink.
Right? Yeah. When you feel like celebrate together, or like when you feel like lonely, then why don't we actually drink? Or after like a long end of a semester, like now the semester is over, so again. So drinking in moderation, who says it's bad? It's more likely, again, it becomes like the soul. The only thing that actually you are just automatically going back. That's the only default things that you do. Does this make sense? But people who are actually growing up, alcoholic family, the parents actually showing them a like example. Again, with a lot of across different kinds of life experiences, drinking is part of it in every occasion. That they just early on, they'll actually have this very thickened like associations with a lot of life events. Drinking is part of it, and which is normal. You cannot possibly not drink in those events, kind of a thing. So now here in substance area, celebration is drink, and also a thought such as like just one drink is okay. But when there's a people who actually has a tendency that if you're picking up one drink, I'm gonna have a couple of beers. Now it rarely stops with a couple of beers, as you know, right? No. Yes, no. Yeah. The people, particularly initially with the drinking, we call it alcohol abuse, meaning that you cannot stop at a certain level. So that initially, like when you drink, you go all the way through, blackout. You don't remember. So that if those becomes more like a pattern, even though it was more likely like abuse initially, it just becomes like more frequent, happening more often. Then we call it more like a dependence. So that dependence is more like a chronic, ongoing thing. Abuse is more likely more like intense per incident things, but typically with abuse leads to dependence later on. Do you see the distinction? Looks like
Confused.
Abuse meaning that doing a lot. So that in diagnosis, there's like excessive alcohol use versus alcohol dependence is not the same thing. So that initially it used to be called like abuse, but now it's called like excessive alcohol abuse, meaning that once you drink all the way through. You cannot stop possibly. It's like vampires start sucking blood. They cannot stop willingly unless they feel really fully satisfied. Does this make sense? So that I actually have worked with a client. Once he start drinking, he drinks many days. Drinking, passing out, wake up, drinking, passing out, wake up, drinking, pass out, like multiple days. That's like abuse, right? So ended up being so that because he cannot go to work, people around him start checking on him, calling him, no response from him. So they ended up actually coming visit him to check he's passing down like this on a floor. So ended up hospitalizing him. So they're going to a detox unit. But if this abuse in episode, excessive like alcohol use episode becomes like frequent, that's more likely not just abuse, excessive alcohol use, dependence too. So that again, something happened, then start drinking, and depending on drinking for various reasons, basically. So that you hear like a feeling such as excitement and anger. Or I'm so angry, I need alcohol. Like I'm so anxious. You know what? People who actually has a lot of anxiety, they tend to use alcohol as a way to take the edge off, especially social anxiety. So that socially very intimidated, very anxious, but with a couple of them drinking, they're like, oh, I can be talkative. I can be like a cheerful and talkative, and I'm really easily having fun with the people with a couple of drinks. A couple of drinks. So that people with a lot of social anxiety, they tend to actually using alcohol as a way to taking their edge off. And he was kind of initially he started drinking is because he has a lot of those anxiety that doesn't really show to other people, but so that's his way of managing his own anxiety, because he was used to working as like a hotel manager where he's dealing with a lot of people, so that he needs to be professionally very natural and very very savvy when it comes to deal with the people. But he was actually a lot of anxiety, but he was good at it. So that he actually has a skill sets, but he has a lot of anxiety. So that he initially started drinking to be functioning, to actually doing his job well. And remember, tolerance and withdrawal, you need more drinking, right? You need more alcohol for you to be able to feel the same effect. So they ended up drinking more and more frequent. And also drinking was free.
So she depends on the drinking.
So that when even though when he didn't really need to drink for him to be able to like perform well at work, no, it's just like a drinking is part of his like. It's like a
She becomes alcoholic.
like this. So that do you see a lot of commonality? So when you have, people remember, as illustrated in the case, she has a lot of traumatizing experiences, right? So that she used to using drugs as a way to recreationally, but find like she can escape. Like, having fun, like having no worries, not feeling really anxious because she's just numbing a lot of emotions, being in views like not really being in a different place basically. So that, but at once she actually becomes like more like getting hooked with alcohol and a lot of other drugs, then she's likely to actually have a lot of her judgment, right? Her judgment is not there. She cannot actually keeping a job, and also she's financially dependent, so that she's more likely to be. She doesn't actually cannot really have the power, right? If that she's more likely depending on like guy in a way to who's who's providing, but she doesn't actually see has those good experiences finding a good and respectful and supportive guy. Ended up actually having somebody who actually had some kind of a similar recreational use, drinking together, doing this drug together. But her partner has all his own issues too, right? So that it kind of really feeds off each other, kind of a thing. The smell is very powerful because especially if you're like war veterans, something burning, burning tire, burning some tire burning, whatever those whatever things is burning because it's explosive. So the sound is really a lot. So that a lot of veterans, they cannot go to like a firework. The 4th of July Independence, firework, that is really common in the States because it's just they are reminded of explosive, the sound of explosive. Blood is common, right? Remember we talked about the helicopter, like a ceiling fan swirling in the ceiling, that they are reminded of those chopper. So that a lot of Vietnam, those veterans from the Vietnam War. There was a huge trigger too. Sad movie. One of my client who was actually sexually like assaulted. She to her there was a song. There was a specific song that was played while she was actually sexually like assaulted. So the song was a trigger. Similar melody tune. And also pain in the body. So the people who got raped, right? Then any sort of a pain about their like a genital area, they can be a trigger too. And hearing a child cry or watching a child, I had a client who actually she was like late pregnancy. Miscarriage. She got a miscarriage when her son was like, I think it was like close to like a 5-month pregnant, but there was no sign. Any sort of like a complication, a pregnancy complication. So that you just like when she actually visited her like regular checkup, then the heartbeat didn't really. So it was like a very sudden. and she has a lot of like a traumatic experiences, and one of the trigger was like watching children. Like there was one of her colleague was pregnant over a similar time, and her colleague actually now has a like a baby girl now, so that when she sees her like in the baby girl, then I could have actually had a son too by now, right? Without had it been like a miscarriage. And also like when one of her sister-in-law was like in having a celebration, like 1 year birthday celebration, then it just reminds her of the pain that my baby is not with me. And she feels really like very shameful and very like guilty about feeling that way, that being really sad for her about not actually having the baby while not being able to like celebrate. So that it's just really a lot of complicated feeling that nobody knows, but to the person who's actually going through, it's very intense feelings. And also it does not stop with one feeling, just because it's just like one thing leads to another. And the more they focus on it, it just really goes down on the spiral, and that's where they become like a suicidal, because it's too painful for them to be in this like an endless, very like a bottom pit where they don't know how to stop. It's easier for them to like the only thing I can end it is like again, be checking myself out kind of thing. Questions? Okay. Yeah. So intimacy trigger, having sex. But when they are sexually having sex with somebody, then they can be a trigger too. So the people with a lot of like a sexual trauma, really being intimate with other people is definitely a trigger. Emotional closeness is a trigger. Sexually, even like a physical touch can be a trigger. Although they know they is safe with them, but their body has stored a lot of pain and hurt, or like a warning sign. So that their brain is giving them a warning sign, so their body gets really agitated. Okay, so that page 314 and 315, they are a list of coping with the triggers, which actually has a lot of commonality between like coping with the triggers and like a grounding. So that now here, like, so the motto now is written is like a fight the good fight.
315 or
314 and 315. Page 314 and 315. So the trigger basically, setting off any of the PTSD symptoms or substance use, and it's very common. It's negative emotion, feeling angry, feeling sad, feeling lonely, feeling disconnected, feeling hopeless, feeling helpless, feeling shamed. Those like negative feelings. Feeling sad, there's triggers. Social pressure, more likely like a relationship conflict, especially with abusive partner. When the urges and temptations, when you actually internal craving. And also positive emotions with others. Again, remember the celebration. You drink when you actually have a good time. And also stay far away from triggers is a way to, if you are you do actually have the certain very strong reactivity to your known situations. Not putting yourself into those situations, particularly when you are not doing well. So, for example, when you feel really tired, when you're really tired, then probably not meeting with the people that you don't feel safe with. So like, oh, why don't we have a like in a drink? Why don't we have a get together? But you don't like this person, but somehow you had a really bad, very rough day. You're very tired. Then meeting with a person that you don't feel safe with, not a good idea. Because you are not in a good spot. Your body and your mind is not good spot. So you are very likely to you are likely to get suffer very easily. Something like this. Again, staying away from TV show.
At time, isolation is better for them.
Again, when you know that you are not in a good spot, physically, mentally, you are not in a good spot, then it's better for you to save your energy, or this person, this environment is not safe or even unknown, then probably not risking. When you are not really doing well, not risking to actually, doing it better. You can reach out to somebody you know for sure that you can rely on. That's a bit more like a safer coping. But staying away from unknown and kind of, unknown, unreliable, unpredictable, and unsafe situation. Then that's not an avoidance. It's like a healthy avoidance then. It's a way to actually having a control.
When we have like pain on our body, or doesn't want to communicate with the others, something like if they're going to hurt me, something will be happen, some dangerous things will be happen if I go with them, if I cope with them. Then instead of that, if I can rely on my trust person and talk with them and stay with them, is more safety, more than isolate.
I cannot say really. Like, it's more likely. You cannot say like, if this one and you have to do it kind of a thing. It's just really need to trust your own instinct in a way. Yeah,
And we
but
need to listen to our feelings too.
feeling in your body too, because your body feeling tired meaning that your body is like saying that I'm exhausted, you need to rest kind of a thing, right? If you feel really like feel really kind of unsafe, meaning that you don't tend to, when you are not really unsafe spot, your body is really like wound up, you are not likely to process. Even though your friends say something that is really nice, but that's not how you pick up really. But if you actually have a friend who's very stable, emotionally very stable, who really listens to you very well, even though you say a lot, this person actually know how to actually soothe you, then probably spending more time.
If they can shoot me, then I can take care.
It's better. It's better that you're trying to actually staying alone. It's more likely if you are not sure. If you know this person definitely you need to stay away from. This person calls me when she has a problem, but if I start talking about a problem, she spins things around talking about a problem. Not a good person to talk to. Not a good person to hey, this is what happened. Then you're unlikely to actually get your needed support. Does this make sense? Yeah. So that that last one here. Cope with the triggers before, during, or after they occur. You know what? The best way to cope is before, by preparing in advance. We call it coping ahead. In DBT, there's a section called coping ahead. Right? Coping ahead. If you know there are certain situations, that that it's gonna be challenging. Again, one example is do you know what PMDD is? Premenstrual dysphoria. PMS like a premenstrual syndrome, right? Having a lot of emotional uneasiness and physical discomfort prior to having a period, right? But if this kind of discomfort or pain, emotional pain becomes really out of control, some people become suicidal even because of the hormonal changes. And this, then it's not just a syndrome. We call it PMDD, premenstrual dysphoria disorder. Dysphoria meaning feeling really shitty, basically feeling really bad and shitty. Dysphoria. So the PMDD, but it's predictably. If you track your menstrual cycle, depending on your cycle, it's predictable, right? It's predictable like when you're gonna be actually when you are ovulating, when you're gonna be actually having period. The with people with the PMDD, since it's gonna be if it is regular, then when they come in, then we know the treatment approach is like having them track their cycle, and also so track and monitor their cycles so that they know when they start feeling the moody, irritable, or like feeling really bad. You know what I'm saying? So that then often when they are in that in those a few days they're emotionally very not really doing well. They often end up doing a lot of hurtful things to the people around them, yelling or really yelling and very snarky and very snappy with this their spouse and their kids. In later that they feeling really guilty about it. This becomes really a cycle. So that when they know they're in a cycle, number one, then they could take good care of their body. Number one, do not do a lot of things. Do not push your body. Take as much as take good vitamins. Also eat well. Take rest well.
Okay, Professor.
Hold on. I'm not done. And also communicating. This is for the communicating those their loved ones so that they know that this is not about them. So they're like, oh, from when to when, you might notice me being a little bit very quick to anger, or you may see me being sort of spending time to myself. It's not me rejecting you. It's more likely I don't want to hurt you. So that I'm kind of limiting my time, kind of a thing. Do you know what I'm saying? So that this is we call a coping ahead kind of a plan, because it's going to be predictably happening around this time, so that you are preparing yourself to, deal with those known challenges in a better, more healthy way. Now, okay.
When there is menstruation period, why anger arose quickly?
Excuse me? What?
When during the menstrual period, some people, mostly, why they were so short-tempered, they just angry.
Why?
Unnecessarily, it's affected or due to the hormones.
Yes, hormone. It's hormonal changes. It's something with a lot of postpartum depression because of a lot of hormonal changes. So there are some people who doesn't have a lot of PMS. There are some people who are actually very very sensitive to those hormonal changes. But if a person actually a lot of those PMDD, more like a PMS, they are likely to actually have more postpartum depression, because their body is reacting. They're reacting to a sensitive period. Oh, that reminds me too. I had a client who actually had almost died of a blood loss because of a certain surgery. So that to her, losing blood, it was a trigger. So that she actually had a lot of those very very intense emotional challenges around her period, because her body perceived blood loss as a life-threatening situation, so reacting very, very strongly and intensely. And she did not know why her mood is really down. She feels really no motivation and does not do anything. She basically spends her time in bed, shutting down. And she was really guilty and very helpless about why she actually is feel that way. And there was her triggers too. So that again, isn't it interesting? I was like, oh, to her, blood loss. Her body actually, really is registered. Blood loss is like a life-threatening, you might die, watch out, kind of in a situation, kind of a signal. So that she was going through. There's a periodic, very low and depressive episode almost every month. And feeling really very very guilty about her, not being able to take good care of their kids, and also not being able to really good functioning mother as much as she wanted to be. So that she has a lot of guilt and shame about how her body is sort of like a rejecting. It's just really like rejecting her, basically, not being in control over her body and her emotion during those time, predictably, and coping ahead, so that getting those hormone check, maybe like getting some kind of a hormonal therapist to make up her imbalance, and just exercising a lot more, and taking good care of the body, and like rest, and communicating her challenges to her her partner, her husband, and actually asking for help, getting those extra help from other people when she's not really functioning. Then reaching out to those people, maybe hiring a nanny, or hiring a helper, taking care of a household work. This kind of a thing really helped her in a way. Today is still going through, but make having those a challenging time a little bit easier. Okay, yeah. Now,
Professor, I want to ask you. Piece 314.
314. Okay.
Strive for balance. When we read the strive for balance, the last second example, pink cloud. What is the meaning of pink cloud?
Okay.
Strive for balance.
Yes,
With sustainability, you may also feel too much or too little. Example, the pink cloud.
Cravings. Oh, okay. Let me just quickly Google pink cloud. As we go through the day, and hold on. Too much intensity, not too little. Feel never pretend to. I think this is more like a colloquial term, but basically you numb. Okay. Pink cloud, you feel that you'll never be tempted. You feel like, oh, I'm over. I will never become tempted again. But that's not true. Hold on. Okay, let me put it this way. Pink cloud. Okay, let me read it verbatim. Pink clouding or pink cloud syndrome describes a stage of early addiction recovery that involves feelings of euphoria or elation. When you are in this phase, you feel confident and excited about your recovery. You feel like, oh, now I'm getting it under control. You feel really like a rosy. Everything is very promising. I get it under control, but it's too hopeful. Basically, the recovery is a very long battle. But in the early phase, where you're too optimistic and too hopeful. You know what I'm saying?
I will overcome all these bad situations, something like that.
I get the drinking problem under control, while that is not true. Because like a recovery for a lot of drug addiction, it's really life changes. They need to change. They need to pick up their coping. They need to process their a lot of the trigger. Remember, they need to change their set of friends. They need to find the meaning, the meaning and sense of a purpose. They keep them occupied and motivated. So there's really a lot of life changes. So that if you stay away from drinking for 3 months, then you're recovered. That doesn't how it works. Because so when people sort of very naively, oh, I'm doing it better. I've got it under control. That's where they're pink clouding. I'm in control now. I'm past without of control. I'm totally in control. That's where there are people in the phase of pink cloud. Does this make sense? Okay. And now why don't we quickly go for this, like detaching from emotional pain. Grounding. So page 125. So that now when these triggers, because feeling triggered meaning that you have to activate a lot of intense emotions in your bodily sensation, because the trauma, especially shock trauma, it really stores in our body. So our body is reacting as if we are under life-threatening, or like a dangerous situation. That's what this anxiety is about. You feel unsafe. Your body is sending this signal, so that your body is just giving you a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, stress hormone and adrenaline, so that your body, you're mobilizing either fight or flight. Remember? So when people are really triggered, we could take them back to those moments in a way, and sometimes you re-experience it as if it is happening again. That's where grounding come into play. Grounding meaning that we call it ground to your feet. It's feeling connected, so holding on to something, not taken back to the past. We call it centering here. So the grounding is called like a centering or looking outward, meaning because like if you go back, because like remember this mental boundary we talked about? Your body is always present. Do you see that? Right? Your body is always present, but your mind, your mental is taken back to the past. Right? So that's why looking outward. So because it's like using our body, our senses, what you see, what you hear, what you touch, what you taste, what else? Smell. Yes. Using your 5 senses so that you're coming back to your reality. That's what we call it the grounding. So that this grounding has a lot to do with using your bodily senses, because our bodily sense is always present. So that centering, looking outward, distraction or healthy detachment. Because when your mind is really, this is what I mean by this is like memory. So that you're feeling those these negative feelings. Those feelings getting the more you pay attention to those feelings and thoughts becomes louder and getting closer. And that's all you see. That's all you see. Although there's a lot, even though there's a lot of things, I see only black, right? So that we call it. This is called like fused. Your reality is fused with your thoughts and feelings. Detachment, creating a distance. Creating a distance. Because in your reality, there's a lot going on, right? And now, so page 126, it says like on the first paragraph, it says patients are asked to always keep their eyes open. Again, if your eyes are closed, you go inside. If your eyes open, you get to see outside, right? So that intentionally using your 5 senses. So that when you see the movie, when a person about to collapse, right? Then you see a person, the scenes like a person slept, right? Slept as a way to keep this person awake, right? That's you can think of it as a grounding, not letting this person go different world. Stay. Yeah, so they keep your eyes open because you need to see. If you keep your eyes, sometimes when you do, people who actually has a lot of memories. If you keep your eyes closed, then those memories becomes more vivid, and that's one of the reasons why if you see here, but you pay attention to the color, right? The shape and color, and different shape and color, and maybe even textures, even right? Because if you, so that's what distracting, right? So one of the things that actually that's often very used well is using creating very a strong sensation. Have you Have you ever held ice on your palm? Yeah, right. In the DBT, right? That's grounding because like the cold sensation creates mild pain. It just grabs your attention, right? Naturally, just create those like a very strong sensations that grabs your attentions so that you pay attention to, not go pay attention to what goes on here. You pay attention to the strong, the cold sensation. That's why it's called grounding.
Mindfulness. Mindfulness.
So that now here, keep your eyes open. So they notice everything they can about outside of the world in front. They can about the world in front of them, about the present, and by doing so, to recognize right now in the present they are safe. Because right now here, even though they went through a lot of trauma, their current life, their present life, they are safe. They are not in bodily danger, right? But that's how they feel like it. So that the more they pay attention to the feeling that I'm not safe, their reality becomes like getting closer. Then they believe that I am not safe. But I am not safe versus I'm feeling unsafe is not the same thing. They are safe in reality, but they don't feel safe, right? So that pay attention to their safe environment. The more is a grounding. And here there's a lot of here ways. Scripts. Have you done this like in scripts with a client?
No, don't have time yet.
So that there's like in session demonstrations. There's like different types of grounding, right? Mental grounding, physical grounding, soothing grounding. So the mental grounding is we call it. Think of it like a safer place and safer person, safer memory, safe and happy memory, something like this. So that, for example, when you, I guess the mental grounding can be really powerful if you can do it. Because like, no matter where you go, you can, nobody knows what you're doing, right? Nobody knows what you're doing. For example, even if you guys are thinking something else, I cannot possibly know what you guys are actually doing, right? So that creating a safer place, it can be a safe, whatever those, keeping them safer place, it can, safer place, safer person, safer memory. So that visualizing, we call it safe, visualizing. So that, when you read, start by reminding yourself you are safe. You are here in therapy. Even sometimes, I don't have any place, that is safe. Then do you feel safe here? Then this is your safe area. Then sometimes when people, especially with the client, she didn't really feel safe in relationship, right? Now she says like, I'm in therapy now, and I feel like I'm understanding better and I feel safe now. Then the therapy session room, therapy session is where she can actually, her body and her mind registering this is a safer place. So sometimes like, when clients coming in, having a session, like in the same place, same like a room over and over and over, then they actually like, even they coming to therapy, they already feel safe. Because their mind, their body has experienced repeatedly, reliably that they come here, talk about their experiences, feeling supported, feeling validated, feeling like there are somebody they can rely on. Sometimes like, validating, sometimes like, challenging, sometimes like, problem solving together, and sometimes celebrating together. So that, mental grounding, we also calling it resourcing too. Resourcing meaning that mental resources meaning that any safe person, safe connection, then that's a like a psychological resource. Like when they feel like they are left alone, I remember this person who really was like cared about me, supported me. Yeah, so number here. in the physical grounding, now you're gonna try a physical grounding method again here. Physical grounding is like, get your feet, feel the feel, wiggling your toe and also getting your bottom. And also if you stick like this, so that basically, your body, your body needs to feel connected to outside of the world. The more you actually feel those like a connection, you can hold on to. So they grab something, or like sometimes when clients don't actually have any eyes, scratch. There are some clients, they even sometimes scratch, because if they scratch, they can focus on the sensation. Or like some clients are actually having the picture of their loved ones' photos, and looking at them. And also sometimes a client actually having some kind of recorded clip, laughter, or any good memories. Whenever they feel lonely, feel disconnected, pull up those photos or videos and laugh together, kind of a thing. That's grounding. So depending on what your clients will bring, really tailor these kind of specific things and ask them to actually keep doing it more often. It's so much healthier than rather than focusing on actually doing a demonstration in the session room, holding out your hands. Think of it as really unsafe feelings. The more pay attention to it, the more you're dwelling on it, what happens, then they see what they mean by this. Although it's their reality, right? And also soothing. Now let's move on to try soothing groundings. Favorite. Think of your favorite color, favorite color, favorite animal, favorite TV show, picture a person, upbeat song. Do you have any playlist depending on your mood? In DBT, there's an opposite action, right? So if you are sad, listen to happy song, or romantic comedy, or kind of anything. Doing intentionally, they make you laugh. So now try to think of a safer place. Still keeping your eyes open, think of a place where it is very safe and soothing and calming for you. Maybe the beach, the mountains, a walk in a city, a favorite room, or a park. Do you have any favorite place? I like in a sea, and I personally, I like the sound of the ocean, the wave coming and going. It's very predictable and soothing. So that when I do imagery, this is typically I love to visualize. The more you visualize, becomes if you actually visualize, part of our brain that those good and happy memories and those sensations that you experience when you are in the place, it brings up. Although it's not as strong as you when you are in those space. If you actually visualize partially those positive sensation and feelings, you can actually indirectly re-experience it too. But it takes practice. You think so? Do you have any particular memories or place that makes you laugh, makes you feel in a very it's like somebody holding you, hugging you? No?
I think I need a lot of practice for that.
Oh. Oh yeah, but this one thing we ask the clients. To me, I like the holding this. I like this cuddling sensation with my son and daughter. We call it spooning. Do you know what spooning is? Spooning. It just feels like very you're actually very hugging all of your body basically, so that you're very very connected, right? So while we are we do actually, this is a family culture. When kids were young, or not just young, when they were growing up, we do actually have a rule that if anybody actually if any of us actually having a really rough time outside and coming back home and I need a we call it tactile bonding. Tactile bonding time. If anybody calls for I need a tactile bonding time, then drop whatever you do and spend 5 minutes just like hugging. That was our our family rule, which we still do. Like I need a hug. It means that I need a hug means that I need to be soothed basically. Something I don't feel well physically or something happened today that it just like really makes me defeated. It's very powerful. Touching is very powerful. Human touch is one of those powerful like a soothing tools, I guess. And that's one of the things that people love to actually have a pet. Carrying them around, rub them, kissing them, hug them. And people sometimes actually have the rosary too. Rosary, and like when they actually, they use this as a way to ground too. No, rosary. Have you seen people rosary, or like people actually having the rubber band, having the flicking it when they actually, and sometimes people who actually cut, having a hairband and create those like a mild pain is a way to, is an alternative to actually people cut. Because like flicking those like in a hairband to create those sensation is a way to distract. Because again the mild pain, the same notion with holding eyes. That's all grounding. So basically creating strong bodily senses while like paying attention to outside of the world, so that you can take your mind off from distressing and painful thoughts and feelings. It needs to be practiced. So homework. You know what the homework will be, right? Huh? No? Homework. Try. No? Try a couple of like grounding activity. No? And report. Because if you don't know, the way you actually talk about this is very important. Because your client's like, what the heck? Kind of skeptical.
I think it's really going to be helpful for me.
So they experience it, experiment with your life. Okay, any questions? Let me take a photo so that now the coping part, you guys can try the homework. Huh? I can actually use it. Homework. So I know it was another very long session today, but we got it finished by 9 p.m. Hey, Mark, do you have any questions by any chance?
Not yet, Professor. When I have, I'll alert you.
Excuse me?
I said, for now, no question yet. If I have any question, I'll alert you. I wanted to know if it is possible to get a copy of the book you are using.
Here, it is already.
Yeah, we normally make copies, but I don't know the arrangement that they have made with you. I don't know.
Yeah, there's like several copies are sitting in the box. I don't know how. I think it's just something you can talk to like a professor, Professor Zhang, about how you can actually get it in your hands. getting a copy in your hands. And yeah,
Okay.
I'm sure this
Are
book
they
is going to be
available?
very again handy, come in handy for a lot of like really a lot of cases, especially when you feel like I don't know what to do. There's when it comes to I mean this book is actually really very like a very helpful in terms of you feel like you have something concrete or something you can try
Not only for the client, but
for you.
ourselves.
Okay, then I'll consult him. I'll consult her and then see.
Okay. So have a good rest of the day and in a week, and see you next week,
Thank you.
Mark. See you next week.
Thank you.
Love and
Thank you,
good luck.
Professor.
Okay,
Yeah, you too
Professor.
have a
Thank you so
blessed week.
much. Have a blessed week.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you
Bye
next time.
bye.
Bye bye, everyone.